Okay, so now we have our campfire going. It's getting down low, but that's okay. First of all, it's easy to keep a fire like this going by just feeding a little bit more fuel in at a time. Also, I don't need it for a long time. I can feel enough warmth from that. So, let's hear an ancient story, a First Peoples story that I like to think maybe happened right here, because it's about plants and animals that live in our Randolph environment and by our creek. And it comes from this area. It's an Oneida story, so that's a Native American group that is from this region. And probably reading this story by a campfire connects us to hundreds and thousands of generations of kids and families before us. So, most of you have been lucky enough to see a crayfish, because we have those cool decapods, those cool creatures in our creek. And if you have seen a crayfish, you've probably noticed that they have really cool eyes on long stalks. Their eyes are kind of like a lobster or a crab. Their eyes are like up way out of their heads. So, did you ever wonder why? Here's the story about why crayfish has his eyes on a stalk. Once, long ago, after many days of heavy rain, there was a big flood. It swelled the waters of the creek where crayfish lived far beyond the usual banks. You've all seen what this creek looks like after a big flood, right? That's what happened. Crayfish was very happy, and he went from place to place, finding all kinds of good things to eat where the water had risen. "Be careful," said Minnow. You know we have minnows in our creek too. "This water may go away again." But Crayfish did not listen. He was too busy going around from here to there and eating all he could. Finally, he had eaten so much he grew sleepy. "I shall just rest for a little while," he said. Then he crawled under a rock and fell fast asleep. While he slept, the flood waters began to drain away. The hilltops appeared again, and then the slopes of the hills, like the heads of swimmers popping up out of like a pond. More and more of the water drained away, and now the creek had gone back to its usual bed. But far up away from the water now, Crayfish still slept on. The sun shone hotter and hotter, and still he slept. So imagine if the creek flooded so much that it flooded up to here, and Crayfish fell asleep right here. And now the creek is back to its normal size, and this is where Crayfish is sleeping, way up here. Finally, late in the afternoon, Crayfish woke. He felt very stiff and dry. It was hard even to move. He tried to look around, but he could see nothing. His eyes and his exoskeleton had dried up. "Oh, yo!" said Crayfish. "I should have listened to the minnow. What can I do now?" Then, his legs just barely creaking with all this hard, dried mud on him, he began to try to crawl. He had not gone far before he bumped into a tree. Now remember, his eyes can't work. His eyes are all dried up. He bumped into a tree, and so he sang this song. "What kind of tree? What kind of tree? What kind of tree is this before me?" And the tree answered, "I am an oak." Just like that beautiful red oak right there. I think it was that tree. He said, "I am an oak." "Oh ho," said the crayfish. "I am still very far from water." The crayfish is a nature detective, and he knows oak trees do not like to live close to water. They like to live up away from water. So crayfish began to crawl again. On and on he went, blindly crawling around until he bumped into another tree. Once again he sang, "What kind of tree? What kind of tree? What kind of tree is this before me?" And the tree answered, "I am a maple." Now, I'm looking at the oak, and I'm looking at a sugar maple that's a little closer to the creek than the oak. Maples like to be a little closer. "Oh ho," said the crayfish, feeling very discouraged. "I still have far to go." But still he kept crawling, even though his legs were stiff and dry as twigs. They felt like they might crack. After he had gone a long way further, he bumped into another tree. Again he sang, "What kind of tree? What kind of tree? What kind of tree is this before me?" And the tree answered, "I am an alder." "Aha!" said Crayfish, feeling very excited now. "Then I do not have that far to go. We don't have many alders that grow here, but they are trees that like to live like in a creek valley. Not right next to the creek, but a little closer." He began to crawl faster, and soon he bumped into another tree. With great excitement, he sang his song another time. Will you sing with me? "What kind of tree? What kind of tree? What kind of tree is this before me?" And the tree answered, "I am a willow." Willows like to have their roots right in the water. Willows grow right next to ponds and creeks. When he heard that the tree was a willow, he began to move as fast as he could. In only a few more steps, he fell back into the water. He felt it wash over his head, and he strained so hard to see that as the water moistened his eyes and softened the mud which had dried over them, his eyes shot right out of his head. Each one had a long stalk now. Crayfish waved them around. He could look in every direction he wanted to. This was even better than before, he thought. And so, even though he had gone through much hardship, Crayfish felt that he had been rewarded for not giving up. I want to say that part again. Even though he had gone through much hardship, Crayfish felt that he had been rewarded for not giving up. And so it came to be that Crayfish has his eyes on the end of a stalk, and so it is with all other crayfish to this very day. And I chose that story for a number of reasons, mainly because it connects us to the animals here at Randolph, but I also want to let you know that all of us have been going through a hard situation these last few months. And I truly believe that we will all be rewarded for not giving up. And I think we'll start to feel that reward by finding all the ways to stay together while we're still mostly staying at home. And then a reward that's not so far down the road of us coming back here together to Randolph again and being together. So, happy Adventure Day, happy camp out, happy end of a wonderful school year. You're all amazing people who are figuring out how to make the best of a new situation. And I hope you have wonderful summers, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Bye.